As we get going, I invite you, if you feel comfortable, do share your video. We love to see who we're interacting with. So let me share my screen and we'll get started. There it is, slideshow. Hello and welcome again, everyone. Let me get you to the beginning. And Dr. Lanisha is gonna kick us off.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Dr. Lanisha Makel-Ridley. I am the co-project director for the New Jersey Family Engagement Hub. The hub is a centralized information hub about all things family engagement. SPAN received a grant from the U.S. Department of Education about 3 years ago to become the statewide Family Engagement Center. And with that grant, we bring together educators, families, and community-based organizations to build collaborations and bridges between those entities for the enhancement of student success. Families, educators, community organizations have to work together for family engagement. No family can do it alone, and it's something that requires those in school and out of school to work together for all of our students to be successful. The way we do this is through our in-person workshops, our online webinar series, workshops such as tonight with Patterson Education Fund on understanding the school budget. All of these things work together to enhance the tools that our families, that our community organizations, and that our students have so that they are more knowledgeable about what goes on in school and more knowledgeable about resources out of school. We're doing all of this in addition to empowering our youth. Our youth are our future, and they need to be empowered to know what they need to be successful. So I thank you all for joining us this evening, and I turn it back over to Rosie Grant and her team for this workshop. Have a good evening.
Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you, Dr. Lanisha. Um, Hello again, everyone. My name is Brenda Ramos, and I'm the program director over at Patterson Education Fund. And we over at Patterson Education Fund are a community organization, a nonprofit in existence we're in our 43rd year now. And our mission is to stimulate community action for change so that Patterson Public Schools ensure all of our Patterson kids achieve high standards. And now we are working across the state with SPAN. So we are ensuring that across New Jersey, our kids receive the highest level of education and achieve high standards. And what we normally do every time we run a webinar or really any check-in is we have a question. And today's question is, when it comes to our children, what gives you hope? Please feel free to unmute yourselves. Come on camera if that feels right for you, or you can also write it in the chat. When it comes to our children, what gives you hope? And I'll go ahead and start. For me, when it comes to our kids, what gives me hope is their eyes, the light in their eyes, to see that they themselves still have hope. They themselves are still curious and engaged and have a deep desire to learn about people, to learn about the world, etc. So that gives me hope. And I'm gonna take the route that we normally take and pass it to Rosie if you pass it to someone, you want to pass it with something kind or good, and I'll pass it to Rosie with some warmth because it's cold out.
Thank you, Brenda. You'll see I'm wearing a scarf today. I'm usually hot inside. What gives me hope is gatherings like this, people like you. We have taken an hour out of our evening to come together to think about education and finding ways to build better outcomes for our kids. That gives me hope. So thank you for being here. And I'm not gonna pass it. I pass it to the next person who wants to go with lots of hope, an abundance of hope. And if anyone wants to unmute their mic and share with us or throw it in the chat, please feel free. But this is interactive. I have a lot of information to share, but I also have questions for you. So please come off mute and share with us what gives you hope when it comes to our children. Just a couple people. Okay, I'm going to continue to hold on to that hope and hope that you let go of your shyness. Jody, go right ahead. Thank you.
Or I'll fill in the gap here. I think we have a lot of really, really dedicated teachers that are just, just want our children to learn. So I thank our teachers and educators who are really committed.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. Yes.
Yes. And moving on to our next slide.
Let me share
Thank you,
again.
Jody. Before we move any further, we have some agreements and norms that we use in all of our webinars and workshops. I'll simply go through them. Be respectful, be fully present, speak from the I perspective. One mic, there's one mic, so when one person is speaking, allow them that space. Step up, step back, listen, listen, listen before speaking. Be comfortable with silence like we just were. Land the plane if you notice you're taking up lots of space. And honor confidentiality. And if you'd like, you can put a thumbs up with your reaction, or if you want to unmute, come on screen and give us a thumbs up.
We have agreement. I'll move to the next slide.
Okay. So today we'll focus on understanding the New Jersey school budget process, looking at a local district budget, specifically Patterson's, looking at a school building budget, and we'll touch on asking the right questions to help us advocate for arts, which is extremely important.
So I'm going to put a disclaimer in here. I did an arts specific workshop and I added for arts and forgot to take it back off. But we're going to advocate for all things in today's workshop. Thank you. Thanks, Brenda.
Thank
So
you.
we're going to start out by looking at the state budget process, which is happening right now. First thing that happens is the governor and the Office of Management and Budget, OMB, in August or September starts planning. The state budget calendar runs from July 1st of the one year to June 30th of the following year. And right now we are in the 26 year, but they're planning for the 27 year. And they started this planning back in August of 25. They review the governor's program priorities. They look at economic forecasts. There are some demand assumptions. What is going to be pulling money this year? There's a program analysis. What's working? What's not working? Should we continue? Should we end? Is there a new program that we should try? They look at a preliminary revenues estimates. That's how much money will we pull in as the state. And then they provide some kind of a preliminary budget to the departments. Now, this process started last August or September, even though we knew we would be changing governors, because the state has some priorities. They go with what they know the needs are at that point, And then the new governor comes in and either agrees or shift things around, but they can't wait to do all this work until January, or they would be well behind. So things might have shifted a little bit over this past planning period because of our new governor. However, pretty much the same year to year. Once the departments and the agencies get their preliminary budget from September through January, they're looking at what they can provide within this budget amount that they've been given. They're looking at setting priorities of making reductions where they have to. And again, prioritize a list of expansions of current programs and or new programs, and think about what they might have to let go of, either because there's not enough money or because it's just not working. And then they in turn review their planning documents with the Office of Management and Budget. At that point, at this point, this is where we are now in the process, there's a review happening with that office and the governor's front office. They're taking all these numbers, putting them together to make recommendation. And then the governor will make a final decision. That budget address usually comes in February, but because it's a new governor, they've extended it. I believe currently the first Tuesday in March is when we'll get the governor's budget address. This is an address to the legislature to say, here is what I am proposing as the budget for the state for the year that begins July 1st, 2026. So beginning now in March, because we're pushed back, the legislature will take and analyze and review this budget, both the revenue side and the expenditure side. Revenues are where is the money coming in? The expenditures, how is the money going out? And then they'll schedule some public hearings. So watch for those public hearings. We'll share them on the Patterson Education Fund site, but you can also get them by going to the State of New Jersey Legislature's pages. And then when they decide what they're going to fund, they then vote on the Appropriations Act. And that happens sometime before June 30th, or we go into shutdown, as I'm sure you're all familiar with on the state and federal level, as it's happened before and will happen again. The Office of Management and Budget, along with the governor's front office, reviews what comes in from the legislature. The governor may veto specific appropriations. So even after the legislature has put it forward, the governor can say, no, we're not going to do this, and veto a line item, and then sign the final Appropriations Act into law. And this signature is what needs to happen by July 1st. Technically by June 30th, so that we can still be in business July 1st. Any questions or comments on the state process? So then let's move to a district budget. Right around the time the governor does her address, in this case in New Jersey, is when the districts know for sure how much money they'll have to spend. But here again, they can't wait for that. They begin by setting priorities in October. The departments within the district, the math department, arts, science, etc., guidance, they're putting in their budget requests by December. Understand that this timeline is different for different districts, but mostly this is how they're operating. And then the building requests, if there are requests, because some districts just give you an amount to run your school building. Others say, what are your needs? So those building requests come in December. The school board will have discussions at their public meeting, and the business administrator presents a preliminary budget to the school board sometime in December, January. They may or may not have some forums around setting and showing the preliminary budget. It's not required by law. They continue to work depending on when they hear what funds they have, thinking about revenues. Do we need to raise local taxes, etc.? And then in May, there is a public budget hearing. This is the one that we encourage people to go to and voice your opinions about what is in the budget. But this is not where the work starts. The work starts now with finding out what's in the budget, what's being funded, and making your plea for something that you might be interested in that is not funded. So once they have their budget hearing, the budget is submitted to the county. We get the county commissioner's signature. It comes back to the local. And then there's another hearing in June. And then if there's a vote in some districts, it goes on the ballot. For districts that have their school board election in November, it's only a board vote. There's not a public vote. For districts that have their school board election in the spring, there's a public vote. That is split because people were offered an incentive to move their elections to November a while back. The incentive was if you move to November, you're saving money by not having this spring election. And the bonus is you also won't need public approval of your school budget. Districts are required to give the public access to the school budget. There's an advertised portion that goes in the newspapers, goes online. It tells you very little. That happens in April or May. At the same time, the district has to put an ad out that says the budget is available. You may come to the district office to review it. It's a large document. We're fortunate in Patterson that our district hosts the budget on their website, and so anyone can log in and pull it down. Only a few years back, we had to go, and by we, I mean Linda Reed, who's not here tonight, but Linda would go to the district office and spend a day or 2 or 3 combing through the pages to pull the information that we thought was relevant to the parents, caregivers, and community. That can only be done by making an appointment. You can't ask for a copy. They will not give you a printed copy because it's so large that they cannot duplicate it for people. So a typical school budget in New Jersey looks like this. I know you can't read the line. It's just there for demonstration purposes. The blue numbers down the right bar, in this case, are all the revenues. This is where the money's coming from. You'll see there's a total subtotal for revenue from local sources here. And then there's another list of revenue. And that's the subtotal for those, which is revenue from state sources. And then there's a subtotal for federal sources, and you'll have your total operating budget, and then there are some miscellaneous funds to bring you to the grand total. After that, you'll see that the revenues still keep coming in until we get to the budget total. After you go through all the revenues and appropriation pages, there's an explanation. There are several pages of what the explanations are. So here, where you see this 190 total tuition, on these pages, you won't see the amounts, but you'll see what it is. So if you go back to 190, it tells you it's the McKinney-Vento funds, which are the funds that support our homeless students, and so on. So preschool aid, it tells you in the explanations, which you'll only see inside the large budget itself, what each of the line items are. I didn't say before, but this is Patterson's for the year that we're currently in. That's there just for fun. The budget, if you saw that page before, if I scroll down, oh, I can't scroll down. I'll send you to the document later, but you'll see that it's 700 plus pages in the one school district budgets, which is why they will not send you a copy, but they do have to make a copy available to you. Brenda, when you get a chance, would you drop the link to the budget pages document in the chat, please, so that people can have access? So what we do at Patterson Education Fund is we go in and we pull the numbers, as I had mentioned before, and this is the report that we put out each year. And what we've done here, if you look at the left side of your screen, it's the revenues, the income. Instead of all those line items that are included in all those pages, we give you the totals. And we give it for the current year, the previous year, and the one previous to that. So in this case, you'll see budgeted fund balance. This is what was left in the fund, operating fund from the year before, their reserves, and how much is coming out of that to go into this year's budget. As you look at this bold line in blue, subtotal revenue from local sources is $87 million. That's broken out in this blue section below. And then we did the same thing with the subtotal revenue from state sources. The details are here. And remember, these are still subtotals. You have to go to the budget to get the line items. And then we do the same with special revenues. We break it out here and color code it so that people have this quick glance at where our money's coming from. Over on this side, and the place, before I move to the right side, the place people's eyes go when we're looking at revenue, mostly the state sources, the state aid, but certainly all our taxpayers are concerned about the local tax levy that's going to the budget. You can see ours shifted by $3 million from 23-24 to 24-25, and then by another $3 million to 25-26. When it comes to the right side, or expenditures, again, we just take the totals. Everything from the top down to almost the bottom, if you can see my cursor, where it says total appropriations, that's all, my pop-up, that's all the totals that are being spent at the district level for services that serve the entire district. What happens next, where you see the line that says school-based budget, I'm gonna move this out of the way. We pull out the number, that's the amount that's going to the schools directly. So out of the full budget of $848 million, $303 million go directly to school buildings, 36% of the total budget. You'll see we came up over the years from 30 to 32 to 36. That's not a commentary in itself because certain things must be paid at the district level. So it includes not only district administration, but transportation and all the central services and sometimes centralized purchasing, your guidance department, the money that gets transferred to charter schools, in this case, 160 million, et cetera. So don't make assumptions about how much is being kept in administration because the district portion is also necessary spending. All our athletics, supplemental at-risk program costs, et cetera, are in the district's budget. So here's the detail of one school-based budget. This is Alexander Hamilton School in Patterson. And again, it tells you what the revenue items are, and then it tells you what so the revenue in this case, you have general fund, Title I, Title III, restricted federal sources total, which is the title funds, and then SBB revenue. That's the school-based budget revenue. That would be a part of that 36%. This is what's going to this school specifically. And then you have all your expenditures. What is the money being spent on the rest of the page? Usually the school budget is about 3 pages long. So that's the rest of Alexander Hamilton. And again, you have the link to this document so that you can spend some more time perusing it. But we did not want to take the time in this short workshop to go through the details, just for you to have an understanding. So in the school budget, all the expenditures run down the side. What we do in our understanding report, again, I know you can't read it, is we run them across the top. So you'll see regular instruction, special instruction, bilingual instruction, etc. Those are the columns, the totals from down the side. We only take the totals. And we do it for every school in Patterson. This is a center spread of our report. So you can look here for clues. We want our community to be able to ask the right questions. We're going to talk about that in a moment. So if I look over here and I look at before and after school, I can immediately tell what schools have, and for the zeros, what schools don't. So the schools with amounts, and some are very limited, like what do you do for a before and after school program for $4,500 for the year? So you'll see the varying amounts here. And then when you look at summer program, which is this line, hopefully you can see it behind my bar that's on my screen. Look at this. You can tell there's no summer program happening at these schools. There's one here, again, none here. So the majority of our summer programs did get cut last year because of budget reductions and the loss of some federal funds affected after school programs as well. So a deep sigh here. And I want to ask this question. So I'm going to send you to those school budget sheets for a moment. Just take 1 minute, look it over, and see if you can answer any of these questions. Because we're small, I'm not going to put us into breakout groups. But the questions are, what is included in our building budget? How much is budgeted for parental engagement? And what line items are those amounts in, or could those amounts be in? So take 1 minute, we're going to pause. I'm going to stop sharing, and then I'll ask the questions again and see if you came up with any possible answers from looking at the detailed budget. Actually, I won't pause. I'll throw it up on my screen here for anyone who doesn't have the capacity to go to a new screen. So pretty much just looking at the expenditures. I'll change it in about 30 seconds so you could see the next page and the next. You can throw ideas in the chat if you see anything that looks like it could be parental engagement. I'm going to switch to the next page. Actually, hang on, that's district. I'll roll down to the school. The school budgets are after the revenue and appropriations. So come on down, starting on page 9 is Eastside High School. It's a good one to look at. I'm going to point out while you look, if you look at line 29,560, there's an obvious one, salaries of family liaisons, community parent initiative, special. And then there's also salaries of a community school coordinator. So that'll tell you that they have the staff to do the engagement. However, follow this line across, you'll see that they had 25,000, it was reduced to 24,000, and then it was reduced to 0 for the current year. And then with the community schools coordinator, went from 120,000 to 116 to 109. So these are things that you try to note as you're looking through the budget. So I'm going to stop sharing, and I would love to hear your comments. What did you notice that might be parent funding? Brenda, did you have any notices? You're muted.
Yes, the one that you mentioned, the family liaisons, as Jody in our chat listed the same one.
I see that. Thank you, Jody. I also saw that there's Title I money and Title III money. Title III generally has, and Title I generally have some parental engagement funds included. Title II is for teacher professional development, I think. So you have to look closely at the school budgets to understand, are there any other places where there might have been money? There could be some in materials and supplies, we don't know. There could be some in the resource room, we don't know. There could be some in after-school programs. There's usually some parental engagement in after-school programs. Again, we don't know. So it's important to look at the budget to spot the places where we do see some funds that could be for parent engagement, and not just that, but other things that you're interested in. Where are those funds or expenditures listed in the budget? And the way to find out is really to ask questions. Because looking at the budget, unless it specifically says parent liaison, which then we know they have one, they did for 2 years, they didn't in the third year. The only other way to find out is to ask questions. So now I'll introduce you to a project we call Ask the Right Question. We're not going into a lot of detail, but we do want to introduce it. It's a really powerful strategy. It can help you advocate for yourselves, for your families, for your clientele, and it's transferable. So while we're going to do it around education this evening, once you learn the strategy, you can do it for almost any topic. So generally ask 2 questions. What is my child learning? What does my child need to learn? These 2 questions are different because one is what's actually happening in the classroom. What is my child learning is what happened today, what's happening over this time period in this grade level. What does my child need to learn is a different question, because in what does my child need to learn, you want to know what are other kids learning? Where should the child be if they were on grade level? How does the curriculum compare to the standards? What does my child need to learn to advance to the next grade level? What does my child need in order to secure a good career or in order to get into college? They're two very distinct questions, and they're equally important that you're asking both of them. The strategy is to ask questions under each. So if you want to know what your child is learning, what are some questions that you might ask? And since we're a quiet group, I'm going to say you could ask, what is my child learning in math? You could ask the child, what did you do today in science? You might ask some other questions. How well is he doing in social studies? Is my child, how can I tell if my child is reading on grade level? So you'll notice I rephrase that question. I'll come back to it later. What does my child need to learn? I implied some of those before, but what does he need to do to pass the second grade? What does he need to do in gym? What does he need to do in any one of the subject areas? How is she being prepared for college? Uh, how is our curriculum in our district? How does our curriculum in our district compare to our curriculum in a neighborhood suburban district? How will I know that they can compete globally? These are the questions that you might ask under what does my child need to learn? So I encourage you to, under each of the questions, not now because we won't take the time, create a list of 10 questions that will get you to those answers. Remember, it's a questioning strategy. So what you're going to do is create questions. So now you have 20 questions. You're going to have a conversation with your child's teacher, perhaps back to school night, maybe report card night, but don't wait for those. Many teachers say, connect with me for any reason. Share your questions through the online platform. Do take advantage of those opportunities to both be informed and to advocate for your children. But you could take those questions and go, oh, I only have 10 minutes. I only have 10 minutes for report card night. I can't ask 20 questions. What's the question that I really want answered tonight when I go meet with my child's teacher? You choose that question. And then you can again think, okay, I'm going to choose, is he reading on grade level? And I'm going to ask 10 questions under that. And I'm going to ask, what should he be reading? Should I be reading with him at home? What texts do you recommend? Perhaps I might ask, is there a list of cultural selections that will help her become more interested in reading? Then you've prioritized your questions. You have the key questions that you want to ask in the 5 to 10 minutes that you're going to be allotted for the meeting. I want to come back to, is my child learning on grade level? You could answer that question with a yes or no. It's a closed-ended question. To make your questions open-ended, you want to start with who, why, what, where, when, how. If you start with is, it's closed. So be sure when going into a situation where you want to have dialogue, conversation, build relationship, which is what we want you to do, to use those open-ended questions. So once you've come down to your 5 questions you'll ask, if you have time, make sure that they're open-ended so that you're not getting yes, no, maybe responses, but you're getting dialogue during your meeting. Any questions before I move on? So think about what are some questions that you could ask about parental engagement. And we will not do the breakout rooms today. So I'm going to assign that as homework on your own, in your journal, in your notebook. Think about what questions you should ask about parental engagement, especially because now is the time for budget season. We thought about pushing this workshop back again, but decided not to because time is of the essence. And as soon as the opportunities arise, you don't have to wait for the hearing. You can always go to a school board meeting. You sign in to speak. Most districts in New Jersey allow that, and you get 2 or 3 minutes. They may not answer your question there, but go with your list of questions and advocate for the things that are important to you. Because if you do this in June, the budget is already set. Your next opportunity will be later in the year for something to begin in 2027. Do not miss this opportunity to advocate for your children. So what we just did quickly, there's a whole 3-hour workshop on Ask the Right Question, is we brainstormed. That's our first go round at what questions would you ask. Then we prioritized. We think about the time that we have. It's 2 or 3 minutes at a school board meeting. And we thought, okay, if I only get to ask 2 or 3 questions, what will that question be? What will those questions be? And then we did some branching, hence my palm tree. Your main question was the trunk. These branches are the questions that you asked pertaining to your main question. But then for every secondary question, you can again ask a set of questions so that you dig deeper and you get to the core of what you really want to know from your question. That's branching. And I went backwards, sorry. The types of question. Make sure there are other types, but for this purpose, make sure that you're asking open-ended questions to generate a longer response and to generate dialogue and build relationships. So my question now, and I do hope you will participate in this piece. I would love to hear from all our attendees today. How can you use your new knowledge for advocacy so that our children receive, and again, my apologies, the education they need? I am an arts advocate, and I'm an education advocate. So how can you use your new knowledge for advocacy so that our children receive the education they need? Who'll go first? Thank you, Leslie. I can use my new knowledge sharing with other parents. Indeed, yes. And this recording will be shared with you, as will the presentation. Feel free to share them broadly. Any other responses?
Knowing the timelines is very helpful. Being able to ask these questions, ask these important questions at the right time, not just the right questions, but at the right time, will help us to advocate for our children in a timely manner.
Indeed. Thank you, Brenda. And it's never too early, but it can be too late for a particular thing. And Kyrie has shared a copy of the presentation with you for your notes. Thank you, Kyrie. From Leslie, another offering. I attend board meetings for my child's district, and I get sad to see how I usually am the only parent that attends. I believe districts should run workshops like this to help make it accessible to parents, I think. Attend parent-teacher conferences. This is from Curly. ask questions about their promises, request evaluations, additional services if needed. Knowing your rights and the resources available, such as tutoring, special ed services, or counseling, also allows you to ensure that they are not overlooked. Yes, indeed. And Leslie said more accessible. So we're happy to do this workshop all the time. And of course, you can share the recording of this one. So I'm going to wrap up with one caution as I share my last slide, which you had a glimpse of earlier. Use your questions to build relationships. Questions are very powerful and they can be used in a positive way or they can be used negatively. So we encourage you. It's in my attitude is everything slide. Have a smile. Go expecting to be well received. Sometimes you have to insist on it, but do expect it. And use those questions with a good attitude to build relationships. Because the one thing that you should be thinking about is who is your friend in the building? Is there one person in the building that you have a cell phone number for? Is there one person in the building who's going to call you and say, hey, Joey had a little thing going on today. Ask him about it when he comes home. Build those relationships with everybody in general, but try to find that one person who will help you advocate and also be an advocate for your child or children. So that is the end of our workshop. I want to thank you so much for coming this evening and for participating. And Kyrie, thank you for your work in the background. And
Thank
Brenda,
you.
thank you for collaborating.